you're left with this new body that you're supposed to be incredibly pleased with because you've paid a great deal for, and you've wanted this your whole life, and you're not feeling like you thought you would. People relate to each other in the group so well, and it's almost embarrassing for many people to talk about, because people say, but you look so good, and they are freaked. And they come to a group and say, oh my God, you feel the same way? Oh God, it feels so good to be here. We're all talking about what we should have been talking about even before we had the surgery.
So people probably should go and get the therapy before the surgery.
I would say so, absolutely. And some doctors require, and all insurance companies, but some doctors require that there be a psychological evaluation before anyone has the surgery to see if people's realistic expectations are there, or if they're fantasy expectations, or if they're doing it for themselves, or why they want the surgery to begin with. And that makes the most sense. It's a very thorough 2-hour session, and I do that as well. But to do the therapy first makes so much more sense to me.
So group sessions last for 2 hours? Or how long did they last?
It depends on the group, from an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. And often it goes over.
So you also deal with people who have addictions?
I do, with a variety of addictions. What's becoming more prevalent in my office lately is people with sexual addictions. I think people get referred more by word of mouth, but I'm seeing more clergy with sexual addictions, and I'm so grateful that they made it to my office. The whole internet industry has created a hell or a heaven for people with sexual perversities, sexual fantasies, anything and everything you can imagine and don't want to imagine is online. Someone was here earlier today talking about watching on the internet the rape of 3-year-olds, and what a turn on that was. The horror of what is available in other countries a few thousand miles away, children given to adults for their pleasure. And everything is video cammed. There are some people that I see that will not look at pictures. They will only read stories and masturbate to stories, and that way they feel that they haven't crossed the line. Other people have gotten fired from their jobs because of what was found on their internet or on the hard copy that they thought they had erased, and are either fired or put on probation, dependent on them getting therapy. For someone who is a voyeur, the internet has opened up the world that one could be on 24/7 and not even see 0.5% of what's out there to be seen. It's no longer a 17-year-old with a telescope, peeping in somebody's window down the street. The images are so graphic, so horrific, nothing we would ever imagine or want for our children and their children. And yet it's like any other addiction, something that is so stimulating that it keeps people coming back for more and for more and for more. Some paying large sums of money for services online and offline at massage parlors and prostitutes and others that are online services and phone sex. And I think this is the biggest growing addiction that I'm aware of today. I see it much more among men than among women. I'm not saying that women are omitted from this, but it's a lot less. I know that in the 12-step programs, SA and SAA, Sexaholics Anonymous, and Sex and Love Anonymous is a very huge growing piece of the 12-step program, where people help each other and people get sponsors to help wean themselves off of that stimulus. studies show that the same dopamine levels that go up when one gets high or one gets drunk or one gambles are the same racing dopamine levels that go into the sexual excitement as well. And it's available everywhere.
When does it become a problem, though? Because I would think that someone with deviant behavior doesn't think they're deviant. Like, at what point is that line crossed?
Well, it's certainly crossed when they get fired.
Right.
It gets crossed when their significant other finds out and it's not something that they agree with or participate in, or feel like they've been cheated on, whether another body's been touched or not. It's a big marital issue. I deal with it often. It becomes an issue when you can't stop, and you know you can't stop, and you crave and you dream, and as with any withdrawal, you have symptoms of withdrawal and you need your fix. And that's when it's no longer recreational, but it's out of your control, and it truly is.
What's the success rate dealing with addictions?
Poor. Pretty poor. I couldn't give you a number. I would say that definitely the 12-step programs are the most successful programs. I know 12-step and psychotherapy is a wonderful combination. There was a time when AA did not advocate psychotherapy or any psychopharmacology whatsoever. Today that's different. That's changed. And therapists don't feel that they're competing with sponsors, and hopefully vice versa. And for people that need medication, it's not seen as drug abuse. If medication is required for wellness. And again, I'm talking about medication. For example, if you're denying somebody insulin and they're a diabetic, you're really doing somebody a disservice. If you're denying somebody an antidepressant and they're chemically unable to produce what they need to feel balanced, you're doing someone a disservice. So addiction is one of the toughest areas to treat. It usually comes from a place of feeling an empty hole in your soul that's not filled or feels as good with anything else. No matter, it seems, what people pick, that addiction seems to be made for them. Oftentimes, someone who's an alcoholic would not be a something else, or someone who's a gambler would not be a something else, and kind of look down on those others. One of the things I wanted to get back to, though, a minute, was the cross addiction. When people stop using food and have had the surgery, there's a tremendous amount of cross addiction, and so a new substitute for food that would be their ally. So they would become dependent on cocaine. They would be dependent on marijuana. They would become dependent on sex. They would become dependent on something else to fill that hole that the food was filling before. There's a lot of cross addiction. That's what I mean by that. And I've been speaking to doctors, physicians around town who just do bariatric surgery, and their greatest concern is cross addiction. And they recognize that when the food is no longer there and the issues are not worked out, that somebody will replace that with something else.
How long does a course of therapy last? At what point do people just, they're not well, but how long till you know that, okay, maybe I'm done here?
I think that when somebody brings that up, that's the beginning. That's the beginning of, not the doneness, but that's the beginning of the conversation of closure. It could take a year from that point, and it can take 6 weeks. I think closure is as important, incredibly important, as opening. And creating a relationship. Because for most people, saying goodbye is